Welcome to the Value Blueprint Podcast, the show where we talk honestly about what it takes to grow and scale a business. Today's episode is Fixing Broken Promises on the Shop Floor, how visual systems turn chaos into consistency. My name is James Grieve. I'm joined by my co-host, Shayla McLean from Value Driver. We're thrilled to have Lenny Howling, president of Kaizen Hub, join us as a guest today. This conversation will give you practical ways to spot broken processes and build simple visual systems your team will actually use. Without further ado, welcome Lenny to the Value Blueprint Podcast.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Excellent. Lenny, just to get us started here and so the audience becomes familiar with you, tell us a little bit about yourself and Kaizen Hub and what brought you on your journey to where we are sitting today.
Thanks for that. I love the ability to share a story. I think we all have a beautiful story, and it's a big part of what helps people, I think, understand again what brings you to do what you do. So, real long story short, growing up on a farm in southern Alberta, got into the trades. When I got through high school and graduated, I came up to Calgary, did my Red Seal. And that's when I started with a really progressive company in the trade of collision repair. Did not know where that journey would take me, but through the years, even up to 2005 when we switched to this thing called Lean, um, based on continuous improvement and Toyota principles, uh, just got to learn a whole new way of operating a business. And that's where the real aha became about how a business should operate. So it wasn't until about 2 years into that journey, so '07, where we almost sunk the company, when we got introduced to this idea of Kaizen. And it was really just the piece we were missing on getting true buy-in from people. And we talk about it all the time. How do you get your people to believe in what you do? How do you get them to be accountable for what they say they'll do? Once we got training on that and we started to apply that, it was forward motion. So to about 2016 is when I realized I loved teaching this more than I did even continuing to build a business. And luckily, with the employer I was with at that time, he was getting to the point where he was done. He was 64, and he had his plan. He knew where he wanted to be. So I took a leap and started our own business, which was again Kaizen Hub, and that's what we do now. We go out and we help mostly sub 200 employee companies uh, take another look at how they operate and find ways to do it better. So.
Oh, that's great. I appreciate that. And I love the fact that you have an entrepreneurial spirit. You actually came up through the process and not just out of a university program with all the technical skills, and you actually have lived experience, which is awesome, which, you know, leads me to we always say, Shayla and I always say that when you see one business, you've seen one business. And there's no such thing as a typical environment. But when you walk into a typical shop or trades environment, and of course, with Value Driver, we do a lot of work with what we call clean money, dirty hands businesses, the hardworking people who build things and sell things and ship things. So these typical shade shop or trades environments, what are the first signs that some of the processes are maybe fragile or broken?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And like you said, absolutely. Everything I learned was from working in the dirt and, you know, learned lots through doing courses and that, but just knowing how to really take what we learned from all of our team, but myself included as a technician right through all the positions of general management. So the interesting thing on any business, including a trades business that we walk into, the first sign there's problems is just, again, the chaos. And when I mean that, it's not that you instantly see people stressed or um, quitting or all of that. But it's just way too much going on at one time for everybody to understand. And so, when we notice that problems exist every day, and let's say you have a job that's gone wrong, or there's some rework that needs to happen, that's all part of life. But it doesn't take long to realize if that's happening all of the time that there's something else missing. So.
Right. And as owners of businesses and ourselves included, with Value Driver, it's hard to read the label when we're standing inside the bottle. Right. So, sometimes you just miss things because it's always been done around here. Right. We try to, guard ourselves those blind spots and that type of thing. Um, you know, Before I turn over to Shayla here, maybe if you can share a story without perhaps naming a client, but you said you love to sell stories. We love to hear them, and so does our audience. Maybe share a story where everything looked fine until something wasn't. And this could be a risk of maybe a key person leaving or demand spiked, a shock to the system, if you would, and what impact that had to a client of yours.
Mm. Yeah, actually, it would probably be the way I got into this, and it was a bit by accident or just naiveness. When I took a leap and started my own company, it had come from me taking a bit of a break after a long career, not really knowing what I was going to get into. And I had a guy reach out that owned about 9 locations and said, "Hey, I hear you're available. I know where you come from. Why don't you come and operate that for me?" And I'm like, "Well, not really sure I want to get into a long term relationship yet. So I think I'm good." He goes, "You know what? Why don't you just come out, spend a day with us? I know you'll see things that we don't see. And maybe that's all I need. Maybe I just need a glimpse." He says, "I think we got a great thing going, but I just can't. I can't keep operating the way I am. Stressing my people out. I'm getting in their way." So he knew things weren't great. After even a couple of hours inside of his organization, it dawned on me so quick. He had everything he needed. It was all there. Again, as you say, from inside the bottle. It was hard to see. He knew it. He just didn't know how to get to it. So after a day of spending time with him, um, when about 2 weeks later, he called and said, "I need you to come back." I said, "Why, what's wrong?" He goes, "Nothing. I want to do another location." But he says, "Your timing has been so impeccable because the week after you helped us with our first location, we had somebody retire." And what he learned this time was before they left, they actually spent time sitting with that person and laying out much of the process, which is unfortunately the residual of working a business to the point where as an owner you hit that ceiling. You've got people, they're all doing the work. What most businesses don't realize is they have a process. The only problem is much of any or none of it's actually visual. So there's so much risk when you do lose somebody, even if it's to retirement, or hey, luckily maybe they find something else they want to do, or sadly if they are quit or removed, is they're taking a lot of information away that ultimately, um, it's it's not about trusting that A player that knows how to make your business the best. I mean, we need those people, but to rely on people to know everything about what the process is, one of our rules is blame process, not people. And when you can't see a process and a problem happens, you're going to be blaming people. So ultimately, that was his big aha, and one of the biggest wins for him to double his business since was he just started laying out the processes. So
That's very insightful.
yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's a great story. And I think, a great point too, when you don't have process in place or something to fall back on, like you said, the finger gets pointed to who or who didn't. What's one simple way for, any business owner listening or operations leads that's thinking, I wonder if what we have is a process problem and not a people problem. What's one way that you would recommend for business owners to kind of look at that and evaluate if it is process that's they're kind of tripping up on?
Again, I think I get under the skin of some owners when I say that. Blame the process, not the people, because like Lenny,
Mhm,
you don't understand. They're paid to do a job. They know what they need to do. Um, it's not it's not about people when there's misses in your process, when there's quality control issues. We run into a lot of cases where a technician knows how to actually perform the job. Whether they're a roofer or a plumber or a mechanic, but there's still so many methodologies behind what they need to do, even when it comes to the planning, which is
mhm,
probably one of the number one issues we see in most businesses, is right from the start of onboarding through to planning the work.
mhm.
I love asking this question. If you had all the materials, the manpower, and the knowledge to do it, how long does it actually take to finish the job? But unfortunately, we miss a lot of that in the beginning, and then we send our crews out to do the job, and you slowly watch everything go sideways. Because again, they're all very good at their job, but if they're looking for information, tools, if they're being sent to their own location, if they're having to go back and do rework, even though that should have never happened in the first place, it does. It's probably the first thing you can look at is just observe and resist temptation of running out there and fixing it right away. Observe when your people are not being, to their best efficiency. What are the things actually get in the way? And I'll just add, I don't think I've truly met somebody who looks forward to getting out of bed each day and going to work and standing around. I mean, I've saw maybe one person where I'm like, can we talk? Because I'm not sure this is
Yeah.
actually like for you. But
Yeah.
if you think that your people are just wanting to come to work and stand around to get a wage. I'm sorry. To me, that does not exist. So,
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, I don't want to give all your trade secrets away, but I also want to
no,
highlight
tell
kind of
me.
how
I'd love it.
you guys do things different for people. When I think of process and oftentimes conversation we have with people, you kind of immediately think of that binder that's in the back corner of the admin's office, dust on it, hasn't been updated in 10 years, and it walks you through every single step. How does it look differently to map workflows working with Kaizen Hub, and kind of what's your approach to how you map this so it's effective in a business and doesn't just sit there on a shelf?
Yeah, and no, I'm here to give all the secrets. Most of my work is stolen anyway, so trust me, it's okay. The best thing that you can do as a business, and I do often encourage you get some help with this,
Mhm.
um, is to simply sit with your people and ask two critical questions. One, what is important to you as a person, as an employee? Why do you work here at this place of business? You could go anywhere. Why here? And what those are known as values. Far too often we see that companies define people's values. No, your people define your values. Collectively, they come together, they work for you, and that defines your company values. Chances are, if your values are the same as theirs, then or similar, they'll continue to work for you. The second is, what are the things getting in the way? Truly getting in the way of you being your best. And the reason why I say it would be wise to get some help from the outside to do this is, as an owner, you might already know a lot of these, and you might even have a crew that's open to sharing them. But to be able to sit alongside your people and just give them all a chance to share what they see, um, that's the most critical part of the start of continuous improvement, because they're going to give you a lot of things, which might, and I'll tell you, be overwhelming to even as an owner or a manager to hear, because now you want to go fix them. All we do is we say, okay, well, of the things that are you're being listed here, what's that next biggest kind of rock in the river that we can now lay out? And I'll tell you, I guess the secret is it either falls into the onboarding, right from the very first phone call or email or website inquiry, to how that customer's onboarded, to how their information is collected, right through to quotation and waiting on approval. That's the one of the biggest ones we see. So second would be on the actual planning and assignment of production, whether that's in a manufacturing shop or out in the field, it doesn't matter. Those are probably the two key areas that then send the rest of the service technicians included into turmoil. So um, to go back on like what way or what process do we do it? We just sit with the people. If we talk about onboarding, if we just sit with the administration and talk with them about how does work come to you, when it comes to you, what do you do with it, and we start to lay that out. After a bit of time and awareness, teaching them what to look for in wastes, like missing information, the wrong information at the wrong time, they start to spot it. And that's what's so cool. When you actually give them a chance to see how things are actually working and they start to spot where things are not quite right, now we can actually start to talk about implementing change. But we don't start with the first. That's by far the biggest mistake most people make, is as soon as you see that, you want to fix it. And that's instinctively true for all of us. But when you give your team a chance to see it, and allow them to question it, when we learned that aspect of it, be it Kaizen approach, that we were actually allowed to lay out processes and then let them poke holes in it, that's where the buy-in occurred. And that's how improvement starts and keeps going. So,
I love that you said that you start with values and kind of the team approach on this because, James and I with Value Driver, we, often facilitate strategic planning sessions with companies. And like you said, go through the exercise of determining their values, mission,
yeah,
vision,
yeah,
and find their priorities. And it's amazing. A lot of companies will say, we have great communication, we have team meetings regularly, and yet you bring everyone together and accounting has one idea of how the business should run because from their standpoint, this is how it makes sense. But then, maybe the technicians think it should run this way because of X, Y, Z. And as soon as you align everyone on why, and like you said, looking at not only the company values, but the direction it's going and why they're doing these things, the purpose of it all, you start to see like, okay, here's how we can mold all these so that they do work in synchronization together for that kind of collective goal. So I really like that you bring it back to the bigger question as to, the intent of it and the intent of the organization.
Thanks. And I'll touch on what you said there about, the front or the back or the admin or technicians.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we all see things through our own lens. But when we kind of put aside this idea that people are here to make our life difficult, or our people don't care, or they should know better, and we just, ultimately create an environment where we can sit with them and say, look, we know that your time's being wasted. We don't want that stress for you anymore. I don't think they want it for each other either. The silos or the backstabbing only occur out of fear or anger, frustration, not because somebody finds joy in that. And
Mm.
then let's also help them see different angles. Like, so when the technicians do get to see what admin has to go through in the beginning to get all the information right, and
Mm-hmm.
when administration gets to see what the technicians need, like the address to the job site, I mean, that's probably a pretty important question we should be asking. Where should we be asking it? But when it's not there, we start to blame each other because there's no system in place to ensure it gets captured. Now, every owner knows that, but where do you find the time now to sit down and build these processes? That's probably the biggest challenge I see people up against. Is it just seems so hard to make time to make this happen. It's better to just get it done. We'll deal with it later. And again, sadly, I think we all know the result of that. So
Absolutely. And how do you handle too, like, I imagine as you're going through this, you want it to be as effective as you possibly can, but how do you stop yourself from getting caught and that has to be perfect before it gets rolled out? Or what's your process in, having it good enough to start working on and fine tuning as you go?
no, that's a great question. Another rule to the game that we teach is don't let best get in the way of getting better. Um, Definitely spending some time understanding what the true problems in our way are, and then identifying what's going to be our focus today. But you're right. What do you do in order to help a team move forward when maybe there's a difference of opinions? And again, that's probably the simplest answer is bring the team back to understanding what's actual value to the customer. And if we can just decide that that one step, even if it's not perfect, is going to help us be better than we were yesterday, now let's apply it. Let's watch for it and the wonderful F word follow up on it that we all tend to avoid. Did it work? And be very, very, very cautious as an owner or manager when you enter a world with your people to say, I think it's time we all work together to make this happen. You become a support to it, a leader, but to support the people, not drag them through it. And that can be scary. It might even feel like a financial hit because they're not as productive as they're supposed to be. But imagine the waste and non-productivity, the loss of revenue that's happening right now, just in sheer waste, right? So um, by doing the follow-up, by revisiting with the people, they're going to make mistakes. It's okay. Right? As long as nobody's physically hurt, let's be honest, they're going to make mistakes. And as long as they're in a safe environment to do so, they'll contribute to finding a better way.
I love what
Absolutely.
you're saying there, Lenny, about following up and how important it is. And one of the things that really we lean in on at Value Driver, Shayla and I, is ensuring that we don't just deliver a plan, but we actually help with the implementation. So and provide a competency framework where people can actually understand they built it with us along the way. It's their plan. And then in a process where they can implement it and we're there to guide the process there. And follow up is so important in your world. Once you've sketched a process and you've, got people that have bought into this, what separates the teams and the businesses that actually use it from those that are paying lip service to it or may forget it a week later? What's the stickiness factor?
Yeah, I mean, aside from the buy-in piece, and that's what we pride ourselves in. We've talked a lot, James, and I've got to know you, Shayla, a lot more too. That we're often called in on a reactionary basis when it's almost feels too late, and I get it. I've felt it myself. I've been in a business that's had it, and we've coached many that are like, if you can't help me, I can't do this anymore. I don't want to go through another year of this, right? Um, the actual Kaizen approach of getting to the level of where your people do the work, giving them a chance to vent the challenges and frustrations that are in the way, laying out those processes, or at least picking which ones to start with, and then keeping it visual. And back to that binder on the wall, which can be extremely frustrating to try and keep up to date.
Yeah.
It doesn't need to be a massive, uh, detailed map or flow chart or SOP. It can be something that's just simply easy accessible to the people. That's ultimately the only way it's going to stick, is when you come back, the plan, do, check, act. We're going to implement, we're going to run it, we're going to follow up, and we're going to revise it. Um, in my experience, most people naturally just start to pick up on that and not often go back to the process. They just follow what they have learned now. So in a training aspect, it's really handy to have an up-to-date process. But the other way is to review it regularly. So again, the owner and management that used to be in charge of doing things like running production or making schedules are always in place. With proper processes, you're no longer a manager, you're or a production manager, you're a process leader. You're the one now in place to support people when the process doesn't work. Take that stress away from them. Go find out what happened. We'll solve the issue, but what data did we collect? Was this a one off, or was this a training opportunity, or do we actually need to adjust the process? But that's probably the number one switch we see in order for the companies that get it, is the owner and management suddenly realize that they too often are not excited to be there, because they don't want to be, but they don't want to be doing what they're doing. They want to be in a position where they can work on the business instead of in it. And that takes switching a mindset. You got to get into a servant role. And the way we
Yeah.
do that, it'll ultimately create a very quick awareness to what's already available. And as I alluded to earlier, there isn't a business we haven't gone into that doesn't have everything they need already. It's all there. Yeah, it's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad to share this and so insightful because, when Sheila and I are working with teams, when people see themselves as part of the solution going forward, it's just so impactful. And one part of the work that we do in in the work we do with our clients is we align and provide clarity going forward. And putting, having people understand that putting themselves in the right seats so they can make the right moves going forward, and the way they communicate changes. So, with visual change, we talked about people seeing themselves in those roles, but in your world and how it integrates with ours, you know, a visual or a process hub or the way that people communicate is very important. How do you ensure or maybe set the tone that communication changes? One thing to say that people are doing different jobs, but continuously communicate or maybe a new set of terms or language or a shared, aligned true north, if you will. How do you ensure that in the work you're doing?
So I think we often run into companies, and, let's say some of the larger ones who indeed have had to implement things like meetings. And when we first show up and we help them understand that there is definitely value in having meetings, obviously, as long as they have the right, structure in place to ensure that what's being brought to that meeting, what's being talked about it, who's in it, and what the role of each person in that meeting is. I don't necessarily know that we're super popular when we introduce a meeting structure,
Uh-huh.
but back to the support role, right? In communication, one of the most common oversights we see, companies and our clients ourselves struggle with, is just something as simple as the morning huddle. So whether at the job site or on the plant floor, just a quick 5-minute check-in, 7:45 a.m. Good morning, everybody. How are y'all doing? Here's what we did yesterday. Here what we need to do today. Any questions? Nope. Great. Go. Often run by a production manager who's usually now just passing off certain jobs or tasks to people. Uh,
Uh-huh.
you're never going to last doing that. No one's going to, there people tune out. They either show up late or they don't care. A true morning meeting is just meeting the people where they're at. They already have all the information they need. I don't actually need to tell them anything. I just need to ask, do you have everything you need? And if not, what can I do to support you? But again, that's not even a difficult thing to do until you realize that, the guy who used to manage production has been able to now free himself to do the work to do proper planning. The owner who used to make sure that they were on the job site every day or in the office every day, looking at the finances. Like all of those systems that currently exist, but rely on one or two people to do, now just get turned around and spread out to the team. Um, the communication now comes from being able to check in on everything that we can see that makes this company operate. So we talk often of what's called a VMS, visual management system. If you truly can't walk into a place of business or even out on the job site and within a few minutes see how things need to operate visually, if you're relying on somebody that has to tell people what to do and be kind, because that person's life has always been go tell them, fix problems, don't ask questions, just make the job happen. We have to change our thinking around that. We have to say, look, if we gave everyone the ability to see what they need to do, how they need to do it, where they need to put it when they're done, and then support them in that, that alone is the communication that people need. And I'll
I love
finish
it.
with what I call the 80-20 rule, right? Call it Pareto, that said, 80% of your chaos comes from 20% of your activity. But another 80-20 to look at is if 80 or more percent of somebody's day is chaos and looking for information, we're in trouble. We need 80%, let's say, of our systems in place, 80% of what we expect our people to do. The remaining 20% is where we get to shine. I mean, we're beautiful problem solvers as humans, but if we don't have an environment where we can actually have some consistency in order to spot those problems, it's pretty hard to get ahead. So
And what I love about this, Lenny, is among so many things you're saying here, is that it doesn't have to be this heroic moment or this big shift or big change. Just inherently, Kaizen is continuous improvement. So these little pieces of communication, these little wins along the way, they're actually what improves the process as you go through. So I think a lot of times I've been guilty of this where you're expecting some big shift to happen, but just little changes make a big difference, right? So I think it's really important. That's so good.
they do. They do. Again, what I love about the grassroots approach is that I think to date, most owners and their people have heard some of the words. Some people have heard of lean or continuous improvement. And I don't think it takes us long to reassure whatever group we work with that, look, we're not here to change anything other than the stress and chaos that you guys are dealing with. You all know what needs to happen here. And that's what's so crazy cool about employees, if you will, the people that come to work for the owner, they already see all of it. I mean, they're not dummies. They are, and most cases, patiently waiting for a time where they can share that in a safe space where the owner isn't living this life anymore of what looks as control. It's actually fear. It's stress. It's real. If I can't make this work and it's all on me, then I'm going to fail myself and everybody else. But to see the life and the color come back to an owner's face, even after our 1 day session, and then the excitement and yeah, intensity about what we're getting into. But the Kaizen approach and the ongoing piece, I guess, maybe back to your communication, is we constantly come back to what are we working on? What's going to help us be better today? There's some long term planning. I think that's where you guys come in. I mean,
Mhm.
it's cool to get to know people like yourself who do a little more proactive conversation with an
Yeah.
owner that maybe doesn't know what to do or is being successful, but no, it can't be sustained. And then perhaps at the tail end, how do we come alongside these businesses once that energy is there and just support them? That's why we love coaching. I mean, we don't consult. We don't just come in and tell you what you need to change. I mean, there's a place for a time where you need to be consulted or just told just do this and make it happen. But in most cases, it's like, look, how do we come alongside you and help get done what you truly want to get done? So
Definitely. No, I like that approach. And Lenny, you've shared so many great things with us already today. I want to make it really clear to our listeners and give them some like really key takeaways here. What would you say are kind of the top three mistakes or things that people kind of get caught up on when they're looking to do process improvement within their organizations?
well, ours was we adopted lean, loved it. We knew and didn't take long to develop a lot of great processes, but we had to run them. And our people were loyal and they followed them. But every time we let off or anytime a mistake occurred, we had to go and fix it. We took that as maybe they weren't buying in, and in a way they weren't. It's not that they didn't believe what we wanted. We never gave them a chance to question it. So
Right.
one mistake is undermining. Sorry, one mistake is not realizing the power of what your people can bring.
Mhm.
Again, I know that can come from the feeling of lost time, revenue, all of that, and we don't have time. We just don't have time. Another one would be that, again, when you start to go down that road and you learn what waste actually is. I mean, we all kind of know it, but when you start to spot it, again, temptation is to jump in and just start fixing. Whereas
Mhm.
we got to have everybody in that boat along with us. And it is very hard and can be very scary sometimes to trust that we're not here to fix these problems. We're here to fix the way we operate our business, and those problems will start to solve themselves. Um, and then, you know what? I think third is just knowing that it's okay to ask for help. There is a ton of resources out there. We often find so many business owners who think they're on an island. It can be very hard just to know that I have a problem, but where can I get help for it? Indeed, there's often costs to getting help. So any way that we can, and I know you guys are interested in doing it too, just start doing the math. How do we do the math on Indeed, the investment it would take to improve my business instead of the residual loss that I keep facing? Because it is true. It's so hard to see up front. You know, you buy a gym pass, you do your workout, you don't see the pounds shedded every day, and then 3 months later, you finally get to see a picture of what you looked like 3 months before. But there is an investment to this, and I think that's ultimately the best advice I could give somebody is if you're sensing that you're not as profitable or at all profitable, you're not happy in the role you are as an owner or key lead, and you need some help just doing the math on one. I don't know how to put the cost on stress or quality of life, but I definitely know how to put the price on rework and lost revenues and lost employees, right? Just do the math. Get somebody to help you do the math, and we can do it. So
That's great. No, I appreciate you
thank you.
sharing those little tips there. And one more and kind of helping people get started if they're listening and now thinking, uh-oh, like how do I go about this? Business owners are busy. And like you said, these are kind of things that often just kind of put to the side. But if they had one afternoon to really work on their business, what's a simple way that they can start or a quick win in process improvement that could help make some difference in their company?
I would say, I mean, for one, before you even set that half day aside, if you are driving to and from a job site, I mean, your vehicle's your university, start listening to podcasts, listening to books. Just start paying attention to what you're hearing because you're not the only one who's gone through this. Two, I mean, if you indeed are feeling tired of where you're at and you do see the crew you have and the people that want to do better, you could indeed just pull people together once and say, look, guys, I don't have it all put together. I am not at all concerned that we can make this work, but I really want to stop blocking everybody from a chance to share what's truly going on. And when you give a group a chance just to share the problems, I mean, you do what we call let fizz out of the bottle, right? People start to relax a bit. They're given chances. I mean, again, careful. It's often wise to have somebody facilitate that for you because you're in the forest with them. It can be hard to have a meeting go well where somebody says, well, so and so isn't getting me my tools. And then the blame game starts, right? But indeed, you could just take a moment and ask your people, what are the things getting in the way? The reason we're asking this is so we can start to identify that next big thing. Um, but yeah, other than that, educate, read. There's lots of great simple resources out there, and of course, there's people like all of us that can be somebody that you could just book an hour or two to talk with. Help echo what it is you're seeing because you're not alone.
I really appreciate your time. And that's a wrap for this episode of the Value Blueprint. If this episode got you thinking about your own shop floor processes or made you nod in quiet agreement of perhaps wanting to improve every day. We'd love for you to subscribe, leave a review, or share our podcast with a fellow leader facing the same chaos to clarity battle. A huge thank you to Lenny from Kaizen Hub for breaking down how visual process mapping turns breakdowns into discipline that sticks. Lenny, always a pleasure. For more episodes, resources, or to connect with our team at Value Driver, head to our website, valuedriver.ca, and keep leading with clarity. We'll see you on the next episode. Thank you.